Welcome, welcome, welcome to Off the Edge Deep Dive, the podcast where we jump headfirst into the most thrilling, thought-provoking, and sometimes jaw-dropping topics with your hosts, Cal and Tam. Let's take a deep dive into science, technology, culture, and everything in between. No shallow waters here, folks. So buckle up, because we're about to push the boundaries and go off the edge.
Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into something I know a lot of you have been following.
Yeah, big story.
The legal fallout, all the consequences from that January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol.
Absolutely. Still unfolding.
We're going to zero in specifically on the Proud Boys and their leader, Enrique Tarrio.
Huge developments there, especially with his sentencing.
Definitely. We've got two main sources for this deep dive. First, a press release straight from the Department of Justice. It outlines Tarrio's sentencing.
And then we have a really interesting op-ed from the Miami Herald. It dives into all the arguments about possible pardons, for those who were actually convicted.
Yeah, totally different angles there. So it'll be fascinating to see how they play together and help us, grasp the bigger picture.
For sure.
Okay, so for anyone who needs a little refresher, we're talking over 1,000 people charged in connection with January 6th, right?
Right.
But Tarrio's case, it's been particularly high profile. He was the national chairman of the Proud Boys, and he got a pretty hefty sentence.
22 years.
22 years.
Yep. It's the longest sentence so far related to January 6th. Found guilty of seditious conspiracy, basically plotting to overthrow the government.
Wow. Along with a bunch of other charges too, right?
Oh, yeah, a whole bunch.
And get this. The judge actually called his actions an official act of terrorism.
That's a pretty strong statement.
Yeah, that seems significant.
It is. It takes it way beyond, just a protest that got out of hand.
Yeah.
The judge is saying this was a planned attempt to use violence to disrupt the government. Could really set a precedent.
Oh, for sure. But wait, wasn't Tarrio not even there at the Capitol building on January 6th?
That's true. He wasn't physically there.
Yeah.
But the DOJ press release, the one we have, it highlights how he orchestrated everything remotely.
Okay.
They presented evidence during the trial showing Tarrio was actively directing members, even chose specific people to travel to D.C.
Oh, wow.
And then after the attack, he was out there publicly celebrating what the Proud Boys did.
So even though he wasn't physically present, they were able to prove he was basically calling the shots.
Exactly. And the jury, they clearly felt that his involvement, even from afar, was serious enough to warrant that kind of sentence.
It makes you wonder,
Yeah.
Like, how much influence can one person have even when they're not physically present?
It's a good question. And speaking of the Proud Boys, the DOJ has been very clear about their role on January 6th. They said they put more boots on the ground than any other group that day.
And just for anyone who might not know, the Proud Boys are considered a right-wing extremist group. By groups like the Anti-Defamation League, I mean.
Right. And the DOJ press release, it goes into a lot of detail about their actions, specifically mentions Tarrio forming a Ministry of Self-Defense before January 6th.
Ministry of Self-Defense, that sounds kind of ominous.
It does, doesn't it? Suggests there was planning, organization. This wasn't just people spontaneously showing up to protest.
It's starting to sound like they were preparing for a conflict.
That's definitely the impression you get. And it's not just Tarrio facing consequences. We have 4 other Proud Boys leaders: Ethan Nordian, Joseph Biggs, Zachary Rell, and Dominic Pizzola, all sentenced to some pretty serious prison time.
How long are we talking?
10 to 18 years.
Wow. That really shows how seriously the justice system is taking these crimes.
It does.
There's also another guy from Miami, Gabriel Garcia, a former Proud Boy. He was sentenced to a year for his involvement in the riot.
That's right. Garcia's case is specifically mentioned in that Miami Herald opinion piece we were talking about earlier.
Ah, okay, so that brings us to the really controversial part of this whole thing, right? The possibility of pardons. The Miami Herald editorial board, they're coming out strong against it. They really oppose President-elect Trump's promise to pardon those convicted of January 6th crimes.
Yeah, they don't mince words, that's for sure.
It's a complex issue. What do they say specifically?
Well, they call Trump's characterization of those convicted as hostages deeply troubling, especially, since he's hinted at issuing pardons, right away,
right,
his first day back in office.
So they're basically saying pardons would be like rewriting history, erasing the consequences, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they specifically mention both Tarrio and Garcia as people who could be pardoned.
It's a powerful argument. So they're saying it sends a dangerous message, like attacking the Capitol, trying to disrupt the transfer of power. That's something that can be overlooked forgiven.
Yeah, that's their point. And they highlight Dominic Pizzola's case, too.
One of the Proud Boys leaders.
Yeah, the one caught on video using a police shield to smash a Capitol window.
Mm-hmm.
It allowed the mob to get inside.
Right.
They're using Pizzola as an example of the kind of violence that happened that day. They're saying pardoning someone like that, it would be an insult to the rule of law.
Makes sense. So the Miami Herald's stance is crystal clear. They believe accountability is absolutely essential for healing and moving forward as a nation.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings up a bigger point,
Yeah.
The fact that there are such different narratives about January 6th.
It's wild, isn't it? It's like we're living in two different realities. You have some people downplaying everything.
Yeah. Just a protest got out of hand, no big deal.
Right. And then you have others who see it as this full-on attack and assault on democracy. It's a huge divide.
And that divide makes it so hard to have a real conversation about, accountability, justice. It's important to remember. Over 12,251 people have been convicted or pleaded guilty to crimes related to the attack.
That's a massive number, and it shows this wasn't just a few individuals, It was a huge event.
It was. And the attack resulted in assaults on 140 law enforcement officers.
Oh, wow. That just highlights the level of violence that took place that day.
Definitely.
So we've got all that, and then the question of pardons just adds this whole other layer of complexity. Legal and political implications everywhere.
Yeah. What strikes me is that we're not just talking about legal stuff here. It's about the symbolism, the message that pardons would send.
Powerful point. What kind of message does it send if the people who took part in this attack on our democracy are pardoned? It's a big question that's going to keep being debated.
Absolutely. It really does make you think, doesn't it, about what it means for the country long term. Like, what message are we sending if it seems like justice depends on your political party?
It seems like that's what the Miami Herald is getting at. Pardons wouldn't just be about the individuals. It's about, the future of our democracy itself.
Right. Exactly. They're saying pardons could set this dangerous precedent, like almost encouraging extremist groups, making future attacks more likely.
It's a chilling thought. Like, is political violence becoming an acceptable way to achieve your goals?
And that challenges everything about our democracy, right? The peaceful transfer of power, that's what we've always relied on.
It's like the foundation, right? And speaking of foundations, the Herald piece brings up leadership. Like, we see it with Tarrio and the Proud Boys, how their organization, their planning, it contributed to the violence.
Like a domino effect, right? The actions of a few leaders can set off this whole chain reaction.
So then, if those leaders are just let off the hook with pardons, what does that tell the people who followed them, the people who actually participated in the attack?
It makes them question the whole system, right? Is it fair?
Yeah, makes you wonder.
We have this tension then between actual legal accountability with trials and convictions and then potential political interference.
Pardons. It's like two separate systems of justice running side by side.
And can they really coexist without, one undermining the other? Where does accountability stop and political power start?
Big questions. And what about the impact on, public trust? If people feel like the system is rigged, that justice has a double standard, will they trust our institutions?
That's the core issue. January 6th exposed these deep divisions. And pardons could just make things worse.
Like throwing fuel on the fire. It all goes back to what the Miami Herald is saying. They're not just focused on the legal stuff. They're worried about the long-term impact on our national spirit, you could say.
A betrayal, they say, of the oath of office, not upholding the Constitution. And it's not just about the past. It's about protecting the future.
Right. Like we were saying, pardons could normalize political violence. Scary thought.
It makes you think, what kind of future are we creating? What values do we want to stand for? What are we teaching future generations?
And keep in mind, the Miami Herald isn't just some random publication. They're respected. They've got a history of holding powerful people accountable.
Their editorial board, they consider all sides. And their conclusions, they're well thought out.
And here, they're saying pardons would be a huge mistake, a dangerous precedent.
It's a message we all need to think about.
So let's shift gears for a second. Think about this from your perspective. How do you feel, seeing all this unfold, about the state of our democracy? What about these pardons?
It's crucial to remember that the attack wasn't just a one-day thing. It came from somewhere. We have these deeper tensions in society that we haven't really dealt with.
And the pardon question is just one piece of this huge puzzle. The legal stuff, the political stuff, the social implications, the story still being written.
And the ending.
Yeah.
We don't know yet. It's on us to talk about these things, to consider different viewpoints, to find good information.
Because our democracy depends on people being informed and engaged.
It really does.
We all have to be involved in shaping the future. We can't just ignore what happened on January 6th. It was a threat to our government.
It was a wound. We need to acknowledge it, address it, and heal. And that means truth, justice, accountability.
Feels like we're at a real turning point, huh? What kind of future are we going to choose?
And the path we pick, it'll impact all of us for a long time.
Exactly. As we wrap up, some things to think about just from today's deep dive. The seriousness of what happened, the role those leaders played, the whole question of pardons, and how divided everyone is about what January 6th even means.
Two different worlds almost.
Right. So where do you stand on all this? What does it mean for how you understand America?
Yeah, think about that.
If pardons happen, will it change how you see the future of our democracy, your trust in our institutions?
We're not telling anyone what to think, but take what we've discussed today and use it. Be critical of the information out there.
Look at different sides of the story, have those hard conversations, and find good sources, reliable sources.
Because in the end, our democracy needs people who are informed, people who are involved.
We all have a part to play in shaping the future. Can't just pretend January 6th didn't happen, or that it wasn't a serious threat.
It was a blow. Got to acknowledge it, deal with it, and heal from it. And that takes truth, justice, holding people accountable.
So as we sign off here, one last thought. Don't let all the noise drown out what's important. Stay curious, stay informed, and never stop questioning, how things are.
Our democracy's future is in your hands.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Hope you found it useful, something to think about. Until next time, stay engaged, everyone.
And that's a wrap for today's video. We hope you enjoyed the journey with us. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date with all our latest content. A huge thanks to the makers at Boundaries Edge for bringing this to life. Be sure to check out the channel at Boundaries Edge for more exciting videos and deep dives. Until next time, keep pushing your boundaries to the edge.